What is this whole idea of good versus evil? What is that thing that keeps grabbing at each one of us and pulling us into a story that maybe actually is beneath us? It's something I've been struggling to consider and have my mind participate with for a while now, which is what does it mean to be exist outside of quote unquote the knowledge of good versus evil, the knowledge of good and evil, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. We ate from that fruit and fell. What does that mean to live in a place that exists, exists outside of that understanding? I thought of ideas or phrases like, what does a world look like if there are no more losers? Or if we say it the opposite way, what does the world look like if there are no more winners? Another thought I've had about this is, if there is no more war, how would you define peace? Just some of the thoughts that I've been considering when we look at just everything that's going on in the world. And I hear a lot of conversations, and I hear different components, and it ends up bubbling into, we end up judging, we end up picking something. This is good, this is evil, this one's the right one, this one's the wrong one. In that department, I kind of have a curious thought about even our own minds, where we have the left and right hemisphere of our brains. And just a curious thought I've had in my own mind, wonder if part of this process is actually healing our minds back to where they're one unified mind without needing the separation of the hemispheres. That's an outside thought, but getting back to some of those ideas, the winners and the losers, your haves and your have-nots, all that sort of concept. Well, what is evil if there's no good? What is good if there's no evil? And what are we if we move beyond the thought of needing that engagement in our emotional state? So that gets into the aspect of why we were put here. So if we think of it from a perspective that we can notion it in, we were made to love. So if we think of love as an emotion, then the value of our emotional states is the only thing that actually does have value. So then if we think about something like the attention economy, we'll see that the value is in the fact that we're providing engagement. It's just that we're giving our attention. They say pay attention. And I'll throw this idea out to people. Let's stop paying attention, but we will invest our attention. We'll invest our attention in things that we view as having value to us, so that we can participate in the best outcomes. Because we're going to need each other to have the best answers. Separation isn't an option. There's people at every level that want to participate in this, and every level is needed. And in the idea of levels, that's just the concept of like the body, more or less, where different parts are meant to do different components. It's probably some scattered thoughts there, but I keep not doing this, and it's stuff that I think about. I talk about with some of my friends. I check out a lot of stuff on YouTube, and I feel like sometimes there's probably maybe this 2 cents is value. And yeah, today was my birthday, so I thought, man, let's break the ice and throw this out there and see if anybody has some extra thoughts about any ideas about moving beyond good versus evil. I like to think of myself as a beyondist, not maybe in some term that others might use or not, but just in my own mind. I say as a joke with my friends, like, well, I used to be a nowist, but now I'm a beyondist. And in that way, I'm just kind of considering the idea that this idea is that the idea is a stage, and that once we move, we disassociate our emotional state from the concepts of good versus evil. We're able to move past and see the game from a perspective that uh, separates our identity. So this kind of is the part about re-identifying ourselves, and not allowing the imposition of an identity, but freeing our identity into its eternal state. So that gets into time, which is like, um, I kind of throw this out there, is that it's distinguishing eternity from infinity. So if time is a container, then then the time keeps spinning. So it's a infinite. It keeps into itself. Um, and if any of the stories are true, and there's beings that are kind of trapped here that want to kind of use our energy somehow, or again, getting back to that love energy as it was associated with um, our initial state to use the word, towards the creator, towards the most high, towards that being that associates with the conscious state that is what we're participating in, um, at its base core, like at what made it happen here. We can associate with that. That's what we're connected to, and that's a special thing about us. That's what makes us different. So everyone has value. That's another real important thing. Uh, Everybody has value, and you don't even have to think about that. You can see and look in the world and see that, um, because in everything, if you didn't have value, then why do you have to give your consent? If you don't have standing, then why do you have to say, I agree, when you start that? Which is part where we all should be reading terms of service, terms of agreement. Um, yeah, so probably can keep going a lot of different directions here, and I don't know. I think I'm just glad to share a little bit, as opposed to continuing to see a lot of cool creators. I'll Let's see, stuff that I found interesting. I find a lot of stuff interesting. Um, I find a lot of different things interesting, and maybe over time I'll continue to share some of those specifically, but I think it's valid just to stand on my own too with this idea around struggling and working past good versus evil, and hoping that just by reaching out today and throwing that concept out there, that others are also wanting and willing to struggle with that and move past it. I do see some things that I find interesting in that area. I would love for anyone to share in the comments or any other ideas about it. It's something I'm sincerely working towards. So any thoughts and ideas, that would be great. Otherwise, hope y'all have an awesome one.